Hello, hello, everyone. This is Dr. B from Steps to the Future. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. My colleagues and I are going to have a conversation with you about this past admission season and also giving you some strategies, tips, ideas, or whatever for summer planning. But before I begin, I just want to let people know that I did some serious self-care this past few weeks. I took the trip of a lifetime. I traveled for 10 days to South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Botswana. And I'm telling you, it was absolutely amazing. And I got to do one of my dream events. And I'm just going to show you this really short video clip of one of the things that I had the opportunity to do. Let me make sure I do this right because it's always a little crazy. Let's see. Let's see if this does it right.
Yeah. She's good with animals. It's okay. Yeah. When they move you and I move, yep. When you lay down beside me.
You can switch around.
Okay, so as you can see, I had the opportunity to pet a cheetah. Then I got a chance to walk the cheetah, and we had the opportunity to pet and walk white lions, which I had never seen before, but that was fantastic. And I got to ride an elephant. Now, that was for 40 minutes. I really could have rode the elephant for 20 and I would have been good. Well, 40 minutes on top of the elephant. That was amazing. But what was even more amazing was having the opportunity to talk to people in the country and learn about who they are. There are people in each one of those countries. The entrepreneurial spirit is amazing. People were selling everywhere. Um, Sometimes a little overwhelming, as far as because they wanted the Americans to come and buy their wares, but it was the trip of a lifetime. And as a former social studies teacher, I had the opportunity when we were in Zimbabwe to go to Victoria Falls. Now, I used to teach seventh grade geography, and I used to teach about Africa, and I would always teach about Victoria Falls. And for those of you who don't know that much about Victoria Falls, it is the falls that has the largest volume of water in the world. It is amazing, and I got a chance to go there and be absolutely soaked. So I recommend it to everyone. Get a chance to travel, go out and see other cultures. You can follow me. Those of you who follow me on Instagram, I'm posting pictures, as I'm going through pictures, so you can go and see some of the other pictures from the trip. But again, self-care at the highest. So let me welcome my co-hosts today, my three co-hosts. So I am going to have them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about who they are, because I think it's important that you know that we have independent educational consultants throughout the United States and throughout the world. And we are four of them. And those of you who are watching us, please feel free to join in, to comment, because we would love to have this be a two-way dialogue between us and our audience. So I'm going to call on you as I see you on my screen. So I'm going to start with Angela first.
Hello, everyone. I'm Angela Bird. I am in Gastonia, North Carolina, just outside of Charlotte. I work with high school students and their families through the college admissions process.
Thank you so much. April.
I didn't think I was next. I'm April Paris Joseph. I outside of Seattle, Washington, and I also work with students through the college admissions process. And I love to help athletes. It's just kind of like a special soft spot of mine. Also non-athletes, but that recruiting process with athletes, it can be bumpy.
Thank you, April. And Lisa.
Hi, everyone. Lisa Thomas. My business is located here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I also work with college consulting, especially with transfers, high school and grad students. So my favorite group is the transfer students. So April.
I'll have to keep that in mind. Have to keep that in mind. And we usually have three other members, but two of our members, Antoinette Batiste and Amy Jasper, are doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're on vacation and they are doing self care, and they are not allowed to be on here because they are not supposed to be taking laptops with them on vacation. So who knows, maybe somebody will pop in, but that's why they're not here today. And the other member of our group, Rosellen Mokumbe, is not feeling well. So we want her. So Rosellen, we are sending you our best wishes to get better soon, and hopefully you'll be ready for our next go round. So today we wanted to talk to you about two things. You know, the world of college admissions has so many pieces to it. And we're always trying to figure out what is it that we need to help our students with the most. And that's kind of like everything. So we're kind of breaking it down today. So we're going to kind of do a two-parter. So we're just finishing up. Most students have their decisions. There are still some that are outstanding. But we do want to talk a little bit about what we've seen this application season, and why we think it may have been, in the words of some people, one of the most brutal admission seasons ever. Um, and then we're going to talk a little bit about summer plans because, summer's right around the corner, and it is an opportunity for students to have some personal growth, some academic growth, and we just want to talk about some strategies, tips, ideas that we think students might be able to do. So, ladies, without further ado, what have you seen that concerned you the most or stood out the most to you during this particular application season?
I'm just going to throw the elephant, so to speak, out there. The FAFSA, I can never pronounce that thing well, but the delays, the miscalculation, the recent miscalculation announcement, I think that, depending on a student and family's financial bracket, for most people, this is a big deal. Like you don't have your financial aid offer in hand, you can't make a decision. You can't just, I don't know, fudge $10,000-$20,000 next year. That's significant money. And so for me, that's the biggest challenge most of my kids are facing. There's the usual, you didn't get what you wanted, shocking. It's a 2% acceptance rate. You didn't get it.
Right.
Has nothing, yeah.
I agree with you about that. The FAFSA. I know I never pronounce it right either. So sometimes I just say the free application for federal student aid because sometimes it's a little easier than trying to say, it's not FAFSA? I don't know. But I'm not going to go crazy over that. But I know some people do get really picky about how you pronounce it. But again, just like April said, that's been a mess. And for those of you who are not aware of what's happened, this document was revised for the first time, like in what, 30, 35, 40 years, something crazy. It was a major overhaul that Congress told the Department of Education they had to do. Typically, the FAFSA comes open October 1st. Because of the changes, we were told it would be open up for families December. It ended up opening up like the very last day of December, and it's been problems since then. Whether it wasn't working right because of technology, glitches, people couldn't enter information, they couldn't submit information. And then we found, like as April said, found out recently that there was a major miscalculation. So it was shortchanging people for what they were eligible for. This is crazy because usually our students are making their decisions by May 1st. But how do you make a decision when you don't know what that decision is going to cost you? And like April said, majority of our kids, our families are using the free application for federal student aid because that helps determine their eligibility for a Pell loan and for either the subsidized student loan and for work study. So they need this. They need this. And anyone else want to speak about what's going on with that wonderful financial aid form and all this craziness? What do you say?
You know,
Any?
for me, it's one of those where I have the conversation with the families. Remember, all of these colleges that you apply to, depending on who said yes and what they are offering, if you get a chance where most of your tuition is covered and it might be room and board, which is usually the lesser, okay, you might want to go ahead and say yes, because the others, it's very up in the air. You're depending too much on your financial aid, and right now it's almost crunch time. Um, so it's having those hard conversations with the families, because going in, as Belinda, as you said, and walked us through, we were all thinking that, okay, at the latest March, everybody should have their financial aid awards, everything should be okay. No, it's just a lot of gaps and issues and stress, and having to continuously reiterate, like, remember, this is a process. The schools are going through it just as much as you are.
Mhm.
They want to get it right just as much as you do. And for many of my students that are, really depending on it, it's kind of scary a little bit. I mean, I feel for this group of students. I really do. So that's just tagging on to that FAFSA piece.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to add to that, Angela. It is scary. And a lot of our families, as consultants, are asking us, how do we pivot in this moment? And so we're back to doing scholarship searches, right? Trying to see, are there any scholarships that we need to kind of add on to our resume of scholarships we already looked for. Having conversations with admissions and with the schools, for the schools that they know that they're going to attend. They've made their decisions, so we're starting to have those conversations a little earlier than later. But we're back to doing scholarships and just trying to get as much funding, sources available, revenue streams coming in for funding schools, than we were planning earlier. So yeah, there's a lot of angst out there over this.
And
Oh, go
the,
ahead, April.
no, I was just going to say, part of the challenge, though, there's like so many layers to this challenge. Some of the schools have extended the deadline, but other schools haven't extended the deadline. And at one point, I thought all the CSS schools are going to stick with May 1 because they have that other form where they're getting enough information. And then I realized, no, the schools with enough money to float the difference, if they're wrong, are going to stick with May 1st. So that's only, that's a small sampling of 20, 50 schools in the country with that kind of an endowment. And then others aren't. They're still going to wait for this to get processed. And I got that because what happened to one of my students. We thought they were going to have information and it came back without it. So I think that's just another layer of complication, having to ask for extensions,
Mhm.
things like that to figure it out. And we all know the best money comes from the college. We can look
Yes.
for all these scholarships right now, but then you got to do it again next year.
Mhm. And part of that whole thing on the college side too. I remember I had gone to this presentation with an administrator from one of the local North Carolina colleges, and their reasoning for not extending it past May 1st is because then it was bumping up against their dates for orientation and other summer programming. So they were trying to figure out, how do we juggle all of this? So I know people are frustrated saying, what they haven't heard from the colleges. But remember, when your information goes in, it then has to go to the college, but it has to go in a format that the college's system can read. Many of the colleges still don't know the format of that particular information, and they have to get a plugin in order to be able to put that into their system. So and everything is different. Like, this college may be doing this one may be doing that. I know for us, there's a list that's been going around of colleges that have extended. So, and people are adding to that every day. So we're trying to figure out, okay, what's the best case scenario for our students? And if you're keeping up with the news, well, those of us, we're reading Inside Higher Ed and the Chronicle of Higher Education and everything Facebook post and within the groups that we're in, and information that we get from the Independent Educational Consultants Association. And we're seeing that, um, again, this is really causing major issues. And one of the things that we're seeing is the number of completed FAFSAs is down significantly. Families have just not completed it because of all of the obstacles that are in their way. And these are families who will benefit from doing it. I know I have one student. I've done everything but go to the house and sit at the kitchen table. That may be the next thing, to get this done, because this is a family that will benefit from filling out this particular form. And Lisa talked about scholarships. And as April said, we know the majority of good scholarship money is from the college that you're attending. So again, that's why you're trying to look for colleges that also are really generous with money. But the one thing I want to warn people about is, as you're looking, especially if you're someone that is eligible for need-based aid, find out what the scholarship policy is at the school that you plan to attend for outside scholarships. There's this ugly thing called scholarship displacement. It's like one of those hidden secrets that people don't talk about in polite company. But we're talking about it now. And there's an organization, discolled.org, and also the Yes She Can campaign that is really fighting to take the blinders off scholarship displacement. And what that means is, say you're a student who's eligible for need-based aid. You get a financial aid letter from the college. Then you get these great outside scholarships. And so you figure, okay, there's like a $10,000 gap between the money that I've received and what we still owe. So now I get an outside scholarship for, $5,000. Oh, great. So now we only owe $5,000. No, with scholarship displacement, many colleges will take that outside scholarship and plug it into your formula and take back their money and use it elsewhere. So you still have that $10,000 gap. And many people aren't aware of this. I wasn't aware of this. So, I think a lot of organizations that give scholarships to students, that award scholarships to students, and then they make out the check to the school, don't realize that that's what happens on the other end. So again, and the show notes will be out later this week, and I'll make sure that I put in the links to those two organizations that are doing a lot of work on scholarship displacement, because it is something that we need to be thinking about. This is for students who are eligible, families that are eligible for need-based aid. This is not for families that are not eligible for need-based aid. If they get outside scholarships, then that's extra money for them. That helps them, but it doesn't necessarily help students who are eligible for need-based aid. So what else are we seeing? So actually, I had the opportunity. I don't know if any of you did any of you see the webinar with the Dean of Admissions from Duke, where he was talking about the regular decisions, this application cycle? Well, I'll make sure you get that link. But he tends to do this. He did it for early decision, but I didn't see that one. So I was watching the one for regular decision. So this is part of what we need students to understand, the volume of applications that some colleges are receiving. The competition is like off the chain. It's off the hook. It's ridiculous. So let me just look at my notes, make sure I got this right. So Dean Gutentag said that they received almost 48,000 applications for regular decision for Duke this year. It's a 10% increase from what they had the previous year. Total applications when they put together their regular decision and their early decision applications was 54,200 applications. Now here's the rub. They only have room for 1,720 students. 54,000 applications, 1,700 seats. So the regular decision acceptance rate was 4%. Overall, when they factored in the early decision, it was 5%. And he said they don't see in the foreseeable future where they will be increasing the number of seats, because you have to think about what that means when a college increases seats. Duke is a residential campus. They have to have enough dorm space. They have to have professors to teach the classes. They have to have space in which to teach those classes. So all of that, comes into play. So when people say, why don't they just make the class bigger? Well, those are the factors they have to take into account. It's not just say, okay, let's throw in another 500 students. Where are we going to put those 500 students? And what if they all say yes? And now the professors, oh, we need more sections. We've got to hire more professors. We don't have a classroom because we have all of our classroom space already allocated. So those are the things that I think people need to take into account. Also at Duke this year, they had an increase. A huge part of the increase came from North Carolina and South Carolina students, because they started a new initiative where if a family makes less than $150,000 a year and the student is accepted to Duke, they get full tuition. Full tuition. Full tuition is $69,000. That's a lot of money. That's just tuition and fees. That's not counting room and board. You still have to pay for your room and board, but 60. So that's probably with the room and board is probably, because I think Duke is close to $90,000. That $90,000 a year now. But again, that accounts for a lot of their application increase. So that's just one example of what we're seeing, especially amongst selective schools. What else are you folks seeing in that regard, or something similar?
Kind of along the same lines, and it kind of ties to what I mentioned before. I've had a couple of students not going to Duke, but to other schools in other states where they were in the same boat, and they were offered the coverage of tuition. And I'm like, okay, well, if you guys can afford the room and board, I think you need to go ahead and make your decision. Um, Other than that, most of the schools that my students have applied to, we've had those conversations, looked at the stats, even though this year the stats are a little different, but it's to be expected. And a lot of my students are happy with the acceptance letters that they've received. It's the waiting game that's still a little bit picky, but just continuing to encourage them. And then as I bring on the juniors and have the conversation with them, like, it's all going to be fine, but cross my fingers, fine by the time you actually have to go through the financial aid process. This was the struggle here, but let's go ahead and look at the full picture. And it also has taught me as a consultant to really get into the nitty gritty of what the schools are looking for. A lot of times you can, kind of lean on what when you're counseling your students, but as you move forward and you're learning new things and having these other conversations with these colleges, and it's almost like you develop a little bit more of a, I don't want to say a negative, but you really want to caution your students and make sure that they are going into everything eyes wide open. Everybody can't go to Duke with 50,000 students looking for 1,700 spots. It's just not going to happen. So yeah, that's how my year has been with my students and going forward.
I agree with you, Angela, because I think this is a rough year like you've all iterated. And I think one of the things that I'm seeing is that even the schools that we thought were safety schools for some of our
Mm.
students end up becoming breaches all of a sudden. And as a matter of fact, one of my clients, his dad, thought, oh, I went to the school. It was so easy to get in when I was a student. And, no matter how many times you say, it's different from when you applied. Remember when you went, it was a one pager, one sider. Um, Even though you say all these things, because mom and dad went there, I'm sure I'm going to get in. Even though we talked about legacy and whether or not the school honors that. And when that student doesn't get in, and one of the dads said, I'm burning my degree because, I got in. It's kind of telling that student so many messages.
Yeah.
And you have to go back and you have to remind them that, look, this is what it looks like this year, to what you were saying earlier, Dr. B. This is who you were competing against. This doesn't devalue in any way. And I think April has one of the best ways of summing it up for the student, that I'll let her say that part, but it's kind of reminding them that this access to this school doesn't negate who you were before you even started out in the first
Right.
place, and remind them about their wonderful human beings. I think you said something like that, April. Um, that they are and will be, and how they shouldn't define themselves. Because all through this process with us for a year or 2 years, we've been talking about who they are in this context. And they get it confused, that they think that this is defining who they are. And I love reminding them that, you're so much bigger than this.
Mm.
You look at how many things you've accomplished. Life is so much bigger than this too. And I think that's just driving home this conversation we're having now as counselors with them, that, listen, you didn't get in, and they're weighing themselves against their parents and weighing themselves against their students in school. It's just a bigger conversation, and I'm really glad that we're talking about it, because we need to remind them of who they are beyond this moment. I
Exactly.
let people tell her thing.
No, what I tell them is that nothing changes. Like, you get a letter and they don't offer you a spot. So I'm really rigid with the kids. You weren't rejected. Nothing, you just weren't offered something that you didn't have before this conversation started. So you're the same. You're the same awesome, amazing kid you've always been. And I try to remind parents too, like, don't get this twisted, and let it become the value of either a measure of your parenting or a measure of your students' academic prowess and intellect, say whether or not they got into school X. It just doesn't matter. But I will tell you, so my funniest story of this year, and I have some disappointed kids, it's to be expected, one who just didn't get anything that he really wanted in that layer. And I was able to write him, like, we talked about this. We knew this was possible. And you have these other options that are actually phenomenal. 3,000 schools in the country. 3,000, everybody has a home. Okay, but my funny story is the University of Washington has become increasingly competitive since I moved out here in 1999. There's chatter this morning in one of our chat groups that the CS acceptance rate was 3% out of state. Yeah. So it's just that rough. But I worked with a young man this year, and he won't mind me sharing this, whose parents both went to the University of Washington. He got in, and his parents put the money in immediately. And he was like, I want to talk to April. And they were like, no, that we could be a mistake. So his parents they really got the memo that things had changed, but his dad was like, we don't want him to take it back, son. And when I saw him, he just was laughing so hard. He said, I can't believe my dad thought they made a mistake.
Yeah. Let's deposit before they say, "Oops."
They changed their mind. That is actually what happened. But I just think, to some extent, like, if parents could have a little, not, it was a mistake, but a little more of that lighthearted attitude when these things come in and don't come in. And like, I have, I'll sit on calls with kids and be like, oh, Brown said no, well, screw them. And the kid's like, excuse me, Miss April? I said, screw them. Repeat after me. Because so what? You haven't changed.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. And then even having those conversations with students and families ahead of time about when they're looking at particular schools or particular systems, having them understand that as an out-of-state student, your chances are really small. I had several students applying to UCs this year that do not live in California, and really a lot of disappointing results because the UCs are tough, and it's a public system, so they are really focusing on keeping as many slots as possible for California residents. So to be an out-of-state student applying to a UC, you've got to be coming with something, and I think families want us to give them the secret sauce. You know, what's this algorithm? So I know if I do this, this, and this, and this, and they plug it in, then that's a yes. Well, no, that's not how it works. That's what holistic review is. And I don't think people, I think they hear it, but they don't internalize it. So when they get those letters that say we're not offering you, and I love the way you put that, April, that they weren't rejected, they just weren't offered something, um, and it's okay because you'll survive. You'll survive. But just having them understand that that is not it's not defining you, but you also need to understand that when you're applying to a school that is a public part of a public system and you're an out-of-state student, your chances are already pretty low. They're already pretty low. Everybody wants to go to the UNC schools. Everybody wants to go to Chapel Hill. There was a time, maybe 10 years ago, when NC State was like, yeah, go to NC State. Not anymore. And sometimes people will say to me, and this is where we also have these conversations with students about what major they're choosing. Some schools do not, aren't particularly, you apply to the college, not for a particular major. Um, NC State, you're applying for a major. And sometimes students will say, well, I'll apply for psychology. That's easy. Well, NC State psychology department is really small and only has, I think it has like under 70 seats. So when you've got, 300 people applying, again, it's supply and demand. And that's not often broken down on the websites. Like you can't go on the website and say, okay, how many people are they going to take for computer science? How many people are they going to take for engineering? How many people are they going to take for that? Very seldom is that the kind of information that families will find on a website. We find that out through the professional development we do, either by visiting colleges or attending their webinars that are designed for counselors and consultants. So, and then talking to our colleagues, I'm quick to call somebody, to call Bob or Lisa in Texas or Debbie Groves in Texas and say, hey, what's going on with UT Austin? You know, what am I missing? What else do I need to know? So again, it's just really paying attention, because it has been a crazy season for a lot of reasons. So with that being said, let's segue over to summer planning. I mean, here we are, April 8th, and we're hoping students are thinking about what am I going to do with my summer? Um, and what kind of advice are you giving to your students as they're making summer plans or thinking about what they should be doing? So, young folks out there, if you're not thinking about your summer plans, start thinking about them, please. Don't just think. Let's put some stuff into action. So, what are you telling your folks? What are you hearing, or what are you suggesting, or what have you?
For my students, I'm telling them to invest in at least one free course, free skill to learn over the summer. It doesn't have to be something super intensive. You don't have to learn how to code or anything like that. Well, I shouldn't say that. Some of my students, that's really what they want to do. Not my forte. But just to learn something that you really want to learn. When you're in school all day, you don't necessarily want to learn, your English, your history, and all of that. Find something that you want to learn and you want to know more about. There's plenty of free courses out there that you can find. And it doesn't even have to take all summer. It can just be a week. It could be 2 weeks, just a little time to do something for you. That's what I'm encouraging my students to do this summer.
Anyone else?
I am I haven't done this yet. I haven't done it before, but this year new, I'm going to give a book list. And I'm really hoping that they'll all read one book on top of whatever else they're doing, but just one book for fun. And then what I tell my students is, and I have a particular demographic. Most of my kids are doing pretty well financially, their households. So I say, listen, you got somebody in your corner who will pay your mortgage and feed you for 3 months a year where you get to figure out who you are and what you like. Like, do that. Take advantage of this time and do something useful to explore, or just get a job. Because if you're tired of asking mom for those new shoes, getting a job can be really gratifying.
Yeah, I love that.
Same.
That's oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, same here. Tell them to get that job or an internship. Especially here in the Bay Area, there's so many startups and other companies in the area that is involved in some field or industry. Just go and check them out. See, say you want to shadow them for a day or a couple of days to see what they do as you're making up your mind about majors for college. Just make it fun and exciting and just do something different. Do something before you go off to college.
I love that. I love that, Lisa. So sometimes I get questions from families about they want to know what activities should I do that will make the college look at me in a more positive light. There isn't an answer for that. Every college is different. Every student is different. What the colleges really want you to do is to focus on your academic growth, your personal growth, whatever that looks like for you. Um, I love what you said about them reading. You know how I am about books. Just get a book. Go get your library card. Do something. But to piggyback on what you were saying, April. So many of the colleges have a book that they ask their first year students to read, their incoming fresh first year students. So if you know there are a couple of colleges you're interested in, you can go on there. You can, go and do a Google search and find out what are some of the books that they have recommended for previous first year classes. Look at that book list. Pick something from there that is of interest to you. And I'm definitely with Lisa. I'm all about people getting a job because you need to know how to work. You need to learn how to take direction from somebody other than mom and dad. You need to go in and work with that nasty coworker that gets on your last nerves, and you're going to deal with it because that's the real world. You want to go somewhere where you're doing work that you're like, what? I'm not, that's not my job. Well, that's okay. I told you to go do it. So that's what you go do. This is an opportunity for students to hone their leadership skills, to see if they have leadership skills, um, to have their own money, to learn how to budget, to learn how to get up on time and go to work. And like I said, deal with people. If you're in a service industry and you're dealing with customers, you're not gonna like everybody that comes before you, and you can't just go off on them because you don't like their attitude or what have you, because then you won't have a job. So again, look for those jobs that may give you um, some skills and something that you're interested in. But I think any job is going to give you the skills, because a lot of times when they graduate from college and they go on and they work, a lot of employers will say, we can train you in what it is we want you to do exactly, but we can't train you in teaming and collaboration. We can't train you in problem solving. We can't train you in time management. We used to call those soft skills. Those are no longer soft skills. Those are essential core skills that you develop along the way. You can't develop them, young folks, by sitting up in your room. Whether you're playing video games, whether you're binging on Netflix, whatever, you have to get up and get out and do things in order to do that. So one of my students was telling me that they like to cook. I said, okay. So here's something. I started doing this. I don't know, like I needed something else to do, but like sometimes I just make myself crazy. Um, I was watching this program, and I might have mentioned this in a previous in one of our previous broadcasts. But I decided, oh, I'm going to sign up and volunteer with Lasagna Love. So I joined this organization, and once a month, I'm matched with somebody that's within 10 miles of me, and I make a lasagna and I deliver it to them. We don't have to meet each other because the way the rules are, you leave it on the doorstep, but let people, you come up with the time, say, I'm going to be there between 3 and 5 on Saturday. Is that a good time for you? And you leave it on the doorstep, but you text them like right away and say it's on your doorstep right now. Um, and that's it. And that's it. And you can do it once a month. You can do it as many times as you want. It's up to you. And there's actually, and if you're under 18, there's a whole format that you go through and everything, but everything is spelled out for you on what to do. So look for those opportunities. What's going on in your community? Where does your community need assistance? Where do they need young people? Um, I know here for us, we have a lot of our downtown merchants really have a difficult time keeping employees. Um, Sometimes people just don't want to work too hard. Um, so that they're finding it difficult. And so they're always looking for reliable people to come in and to work in their stores, to learn customer service. So again, use your networks. I don't think kids currently understand how to use a network. If your parents know people, then use that. If they don't, then you're talking to your teachers, you're talking to your dentist. I told someone, I said, "Oh, you want to go into pre med, or you're not sure. Ask your doctor if you can." I said, "Do you have a doctor?" "Yeah." "Do you go see your doctor?" "Yeah." "Okay, so ask your doctor if you can shadow him or her, and if not, do they know someone that you could shadow, or you could do an informational interview with. Talk to these people that are already in your life. People are really, really wanting to help folks. But if you don't ask, you'll never get an answer. So that's kind of what and I want people to also not feel. I was talking to another student. This student is so driven and thinking that if I do this, this, and this is going to guarantee that I will get into the school. There are no guarantees. There are so don't do that. So, as April said, find those things that interest you, especially those of you who don't have to worry about it financially. Go out there and learn something new. I love what Angela said. Coursera is a great place to go and take free courses and learn something new. So again, you need to do this and you need to be thinking about it. Some of the major programs that you have to apply to, if you haven't applied already, they may be too late, especially the ones that are offered by the colleges. But again, get on those websites, start looking. What other
Uh,
advice?
yeah, no, I'm just listening to you, and I think this whole myth of like cracking the code and creating the perfect application that's going to get you like that just has to be done away with, because there's also this whole institutional priorities piece. What does the school need on a given year? And we can't, like I tell my students, you can't go back to 3 years old and become an oboe player because this year X school wants an oboe player. And by the way, you hate music. So like we just have to really understand. And I do think if we're going to crack the code, so to speak, it's what you were saying, pursue. And Angela, you were saying too, pursue the thing that you're interested in. Pursue that. Find something that's going to let you explore and deepen your knowledge of that. And then you're going to have better essays to write because you're going to have real content about things you can really talk about. Otherwise, you're just filling up with fluff. And if you think that adults aren't smart enough to know the difference between the kid who did robotics because they were really, really interested and the kid who did robotics because their mother made them, like it just jumps off the page.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I could add to that too, something that you said, Dr. B, about building some of those soft skills. And, one of the things that we know is that when students go and get a summer job, sometimes if they build those strong relationships and networks and they're building those skills, they can actually come back every summer after your college break. You continue working with that company, that
Mm.
organization during the summer. So see it as a place, especially if it's a good place to really want to work later on. Those summer jobs, I don't care if it's pouring coffee, stay there. Keep coming back every summer. And then just another part of that is building those skills can go so far. And one of the things that I used to
Mm.
do in my when I wear my other hat as an
Mhm.
administrator, when we hired students who were coming out of college, you'd be surprised at things that stood out to us. And they're no longer soft skills. You said it perfectly. One of the students that we hired, well, she wasn't a student, she was now out of college, was because we asked her, if you were given this job and we asked you to do X, she didn't know what X is, right? And we gave you the tools. How would you approach your work? Her answer was, well, I always do everything by creating a list. I still remember. I start with a list. I create a list. Then I have my calendar. I put things on my physical calendar. Then I put it in my computer and I inform people who needs to be a part of that part of the calendar.
Mm.
The young lady told us how she organized herself and we hired her just on that. She didn't know X. People came into the room who were, they knew about X and they couldn't tell us
Mhm.
how they would organize themselves. And that to me stood out. And she learned that in college and she took that forward. So you never know how those skills will be adaptable and you use and will make you stand out later on.
That is so true. That is so true.
And just to add to that networking piece, I have quite a few of my students that go to church of some sort, and it never fails that they forget to use their church group. That as they could be the lead of the youth ushers, they could be in the choir, they can be in charge of the dance ministry, and those leadership skills that have always been there and they've been nurturing it, they totally forget about it. They also
Mm.
forget to, hey, I can also ask this person that was the adult in charge who might have, insight into, well, what else do I need to develop? Maybe there's someone that they might know that would be able to help me develop a skill or see if I want to pursue this particular interest. So it's almost like some of the things are already there, but they forget to look around because they're only seeing like, I have to go to college and I have to meet these things. It's like, well, sometimes you need to look around and see, well, who can help me get there? And as you guys have all mentioned, it's not about necessarily getting to what the school wants. It's, well, what do you want? You're a major factor in this whole thing as the student.
Yes.
That's you're not going to be happy if it's like, okay, yay, I got into this school, but it totally does not do anything for me.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Yeah. That is so true. That is so true. Yeah. When I talk to kids about networking, they're like, network, but I'm too young to network. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Think about, friends that you know, like, oh, you knew that you needed this video game, so you didn't have it, but you knew your friend's friend had it. That's networking. Now use it in a different way. I said, you got to be intentional. You have to be intentional about it. And I'm really, again, encouraging them to do those informational interviews. I said, people love to talk about what they do. They love to talk about what they do. So ask them. All they can do is say no, you know? And you'd be really surprised how many people want to say yes to you. Be really surprised. So, any other words about summer planning or about mission season this season?
keep the faith, everybody. It's rough for all sides, all parties, for the colleges, the parents, the students, us as consultants. It's there's light at the end of this tunnel. We're almost there. Just you have to look at things a little differently this year, and yeah, be flexible and be ready to pivot.
Yeah, yeah. That pivot, that 5 letter word. become really, really important these days.
I would say, keep focused on the right stuff, right? It's easy to spend the summer thinking you got to push your kid to do this, push your kid to do that, push your kid to do the other thing. And then they're leaving in a year. They're a junior right now. And then you don't even know who this person is. And this person doesn't want to know who you are because you were so miserable pushing them to do all this stuff. Like, reduce the focus on college because this is a long haul game. College is 4 years in their life. If we're raising them, we're raising them for the time after.
Right, right. And I heard in another session, I've heard this so many times, and I think actually Rick Clark and Brennan Bernard have it in their book where they ask families to limit the amount of time that they're actually having these conversations about college to like once a week. So pick a day and time. So like, maybe it's Saturday afternoon, maybe it's Saturday after dinner or something. But to hound students 7 days a week about what are you going to do? Why didn't you do that? Because they're getting it from everybody else outside. They're getting it from their peers. And, we're also dealing with students whose peers have gotten into schools that they didn't get into, that they weren't offered a place in. And they're wondering, like, what's wrong with me? How come I wasn't offered a spot? So again, they're getting this from all sides. So they really need the home to be a place, almost like neutral territory. They need it to be neutral and I know as a parent that is hard to do because sending your child off to college is a major investment. It's a major investment. But you also want them whole and healthy. So maybe do that. Pick one day that you're going to have those conversations and tell other relatives and stuff to back off. Back off.
On that note, I would love to say to everyone in this process, parents and students alike, to be intentional about the next set of days and weeks, similar to what April said. Be intentional in recognizing the moments you're sitting in, that this is your last summer as a kid at home. This is your last summer with your kid at home. Do something intentional, be purposeful, be mindful, write stuff in your journal, write them letters that you want them to remember about this moment, but just be intentional with everything that you do as you move forward, as you start this transition.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, you folks know that I always love to talk about a book. I have to recommend a book. So I volunteer also with our local library system. So I'm going to be doing a book discussion with a group of high school students, and so I had to read the book first, and it was really good. I mean, I think it's so important. People, books get labeled, by different genre. So this is actually a young adult book, but the storyline is so good, and it's all about being true to yourself. It's about using your voice. It's about finding your talent, and the book is called. Let me put the title up here on the thing. It's called "Piecing Me Together," and it's by Renee Watson. It is so good. I mean, I think adults should read this because you get to see the internal struggles that a young person is having, and how she goes about dealing with it. I'm not going to talk about the whole story, but I think it's a really good book, and I'm always, recommending books that aren't necessarily for young adults. But I think this one is one that is good for young adults. It's good for anyone to read, and it's actually a Newbery. It has received the Newbery honors, so it's a book that has been recognized um, for what it brings. And the other thing I want to do, so I am thrilled that we get to do this because I love talking with these talented, amazing, fascinating women because we all come at this with our own perspectives, our own ways of doing things. And I think it's important for people to understand that and see that independent educational consultants come in all flavors. We all have our specialties, we all have our ways of working with our students. But more than anything else, we all believe in the work that we do. or else we wouldn't be doing this, because being a solopreneur is not for the faint of heart. And we do it, and we continue doing it. So for those of you who are joining us on these, thank you. We are hoping to do this once a month, so that you will get to see some combination of our faces here, all of us or some of us, whoever can make it. And to our friends, Antoinette and Amy, I hope you are really, really enjoying your vacation, because you deserve it. And Rosellen, get well soon, because we miss your voice here. For those of you that are going to join in next week, I am so thrilled to have this person next week. I love to talk about careers and to have people think about the different types of careers that are out there. So I'm always looking to see who's doing what. So I met this young man, actually. I think we were still in COVID, and I had gone over to our local botanical garden, and he was doing a presentation. And I just want to see if I can pull this slide up here. So next week, my guest is going to be Mike Gabby says Gibson, who is a topiary specialist. And he is really working hard to expand the diversity within this profession. So the day that I got to see him, I was like flabbergasted. And it was one of those hot days. I sat out there. I think I sat there. It was 3 to 4 hours just watching him shape the bushes in the garden, and to talk about it, and to talk. It was like I was fascinated, but I mean, I was like, I was so hot. And actually, I was there with a friend, and she left. She goes, "It's too hot. I can't sit out in this heat." So Mike is going to be with us next week to talk about what it takes to become a topiary specialist, how he got to that point, what was his motivation for doing it, and where he hopes to move this particular profession in the next few years. So if you're around next Monday evening at 7 p.m., please join me for a conversation with Mike Gabby says Gibson. And again, thank you so much, Angela, April, and Lisa, for taking time out of your ridiculously busy schedules to be here, because I know we're all busy. But I do appreciate your conversation with you, and I appreciate the people that tuned in and the people that are watching this on the replay. Again, if you have any questions, you can still post the questions, and we will make sure that you get the answers. And by the end of the week, I will have some show notes up for you so that you can continue with the conversation. So take care, everyone, and thank you again so much for joining us.